I just want to introduce Valentina Shapovalova, researcher, analyst, and program lead at Defense Innovation Highway, our partners. You probably are noticing that very often now in the programming of Ukraine House in Denmark, we have events by Defense Innovation Highway on different topics. And in the areas of cognitive warfare, in the areas of comprehensive security and total defense, of course, we're looking at culture and cultural resilience as one of the ways to to be resilient towards this threat that we are all facing. Please kindly take your seats because we need to start and finish on time. And we have an intervention from Ukraine by a great colleague of mine, Liubov Tsybulska, with whom I share over 10 years of joint experience of working for Ukraine in Ukraine's interests. I'm really excited that Luba will be joining us at the very beginning of this session, and then Valentina will introduce all of the speakers. Valentina. Oh, you have it. Okay,
yeah,
good.
It just needs to be turned on.
Mm-hmm.
It's for me. It's for you? Yeah, put it.
So dobra. Yeah, thank you so much for those who have stuck around the whole day. I know it is the last panel, but luckily there was sugar in the break, so I hope that that you didn't hold back. I am so happy and so privileged to be hosting this panel as someone who was born in Odessa, Ukraine, and has grown up in the Nordics, has gone through some personal decolonization processes, and has also done research on Russian disinformation and propaganda from a critical perspective, where I looked into the different gendered components, the different also colonial components of Russian narratives, which is a concept that you have already heard quite a few times today. Narratives, we keep coming back to them. The importance of narrative, the importance of Russian narrative in promoting the so-called Great Russian culture, and so I am very pleased to introduce our stellar panel. We will have different perspectives today from Ukraine, Belarus, and Tatarstan. And speaking of narrative and knowledge, we will start with Liubov, who is an amazing Ukrainian expert. I met Liubov in Kiev when I was there last time. Liubov is one of the leading experts on informational warfare and cognitive warfare in Ukraine. She leads the Join Ukraine NGO that works within this field, and is the former inaugural head of the Center for Strategic Communications, which was based under the Ministry of Culture previously, but is now part of the Foreign Ministry of Ukraine. And Liubov, you will start with a small intervention, and then we will move on to the questions.
So I would start with the fact that we tend to treat culture as something separate from security, as something soft, something apolitical, even harmless. But if we look at how Russia operates, this distinction simply doesn't hold. My organization, Join Ukraine, conducted a study on how Russia instrumentalizes its culture. And our focus was, first of all, Russian strategic documents and what place culture has in these documents. And the key conclusion is very simple. Russian culture is not only a tool of soft power, it's a part of war. It follows a very old principle you are very much aware about. First, you win hearts, and only then you take land. And to understand this, we need to look at the system. Russia openly defines culture, language, and historical memory as tools of foreign policy and national security. Culture is not just about art or music, it's about influence, first of all. And the center of this system is, of course, the concept that you heard today many times, I'm sure, which called Ruski Mir, or Russian world. It's often presented as a cultural space. In reality, it's a political project. Its goal is to create a sphere of influence beyond Russia's borders and to justify interference in other states. Russia also treats people as part of this system. Russian-speaking communities abroad are seen as a resource, and they literally indicated in their documents as environments where influence can be built and mobilized. And this is why the narrative of protecting Russian speakers appears repeatedly in moments of aggression. And how does this work in practice? So, first, through narratives. Again, Russia consistently promotes messages that justify its actions, protecting Russian speakers, restoring historical justice, provocation by the West, and so on. And these narratives are repeated across politics, across media, and culture. Second, through institutions. Organizations like Россотрудничество and the Ruski Mir Foundation operate globally. They present themselves as cultural platforms, but in reality, they are state-funded tools of influence. They create networks, recruit agents, shape perceptions, and promote a favorable image of Russia even during war. And of course, through culture itself, well-known artists, performers, and cultural figures become part of this system because culture creates trust, and trust can be converted into influence. And also through global infrastructure. Russian cultural centers operates across continents. They host concerts, they host exhibitions, but also events, films, and content that promote Kremlin narratives and reinterpret the war. And finally, through occupation. And it was separate focus of our research. In occupied territories, culture becomes a tool of control. It means rewriting history, changing education, imposing language, and erasing identity. At the same time, cultural heritage is physically destroyed, and we saw it in Mariupol, we saw it in Kherson when it was occupied, and of course, we saw it in Crimea. So we see a lot of we see the full spectrum, and culture is used to prepare the ground to justify aggression, to influence global audiences, and to consolidate control. Probably I would stop here, and then let's have a discussion further.
Thank you so much, Liubov. And I would like to follow up with a question on, and it's going to be quite a broad question, so it would be great if you could give us a few examples that are concrete. How is Ukraine pushing back against all of these attempts by Russia across the different layers and levels, on the political, societal level? How is Ukraine pushing back, and how is Ukraine working with decolonization against Russia since the beginning of the full-scale war?
I would say that Russia uses cultural narratives not as background, but as infrastructure for cognitive warfare. And the core are, of course, these few persistent storylines that Ukraine is not a real nation, that Ukrainians and Russians are the same people, that Russia has a historical right, even responsibility to intervene. And these narratives are embedded in language, history, religion, and popular culture. They are not new, of course, but they are constantly adapted to the current phase of the war. And what is important is that this is not spontaneous, it is institutionalized. And this is exactly why Ukraine adopted the law on the condemnation and prohibition of the propaganda of Russian imperial policy in 2023 and the decolonization of toponymy. Why? Because names of the streets, monuments, cultural references, all of this is not neutral. It is part of how reality is constructed. And Russia weaponizes culture to normalize its presence, to blur distinctions between identities, and to create this sense of inevitability. So cognitive warfare here is not only about disinformation, it's about shaping the environment in which people think long before any message is delivered. So this is on the government level, and on the level of civil society, I think it comes from communities. People want to look at Ukrainian culture differently. They want to look at Russian culture differently. It's their natural wish. They want to rethink, and they want to look at the context how and when it was created. So, and I think that in Ukraine, it even goes probably more bottom up. It's not coming first of all from the government. It's coming from people.
And following up on that, and if we look broader outside of the borders of Ukraine, because Ukraine has been both top down and bottom up, so on different levels as well, very effective when it comes to strategic communication, especially in the very beginning of the full-scale war. So what have Ukrainians understood about the power of narratives that a lot of the European institutions maybe have not gotten yet?
I think that the Ukrainians understood one key thing clearly, that narratives are not like decoration, that they are battlefield. And Ukraine did not treat communication as an afterthought to policy. It treated as a part of policy, and this means like clarity of messages, consistency, emotional connection, and ability to explain complex reality in simple human terms. And then again, it was coming bottom up. It was like, especially in 2022 and 2023, it was communicated by people, and the government mostly just only, took the best examples and showed to international audience. And it was also very sincere. And I think this is something that audiences in other countries saw very clearly and understood very vividly, that it's absolutely sincere, that these people do not want to be under Russia's rule. And they have their own narrative, they have their own story, they have their own culture to show.
I think this is such an important point to make when we talk about propaganda and counter-propaganda, that, and I think one of the speakers mentioned it earlier, that it's not just about counter-narratives, it's also about creating your own narratives and being effective and efficient in communicating them. Thank you so much, Liubov. We'll get back to you a little bit later. And now we'll move on to Elizaveta Dubinska-Hushcha. Yeah, sorry for mispronouncing your last name. You are the chairperson of the board of the Beladania, the Danish Belarusian Cultural Society. You have worked tremendously on the Belarusian politics, on the relationship between Belarus and Denmark. You have also worked in the Baltics. So you come in with a lot of different perspectives, both working in academia and working for the Danish Cultural Institute. And with these different perspectives, and especially focusing on the perspective of Belarus, how has this idea of the so-called Great Russian culture affected national identity historically and today?
Thank you very much. It's truly a pleasure and honor to be here today. Thank you very much for staying, and thanks for having me here. For me, it's important to be part of this conversation, also personally, because of my personal background. My grandfather was Ukrainian, and I'm really proud of this part of my roots. And for me, Ukraine and Belarus, they are interconnected on many different levels. It is unfortunate what is going on in Ukraine, the full scale. It is a scar and a big spot of shame for us as Belarusians who involuntarily are associated with this aggression. But I would like to go back a little bit in time to the protest in 2020, because that was the moment where Belarusians who are generally considered to be quite quiet and people, not particularly revolutionary, came out and expressed their true identity, their thoughts and their courage. So as hundreds of thousands of Belarusians took to the streets in autumn 2020 to demand a political change, it was a culture and a language that became immediately a visible symbol. It was not planned, as far as we know from the activists, from the political activists and political leaders of the protest. It was not planned, but something happened, something clicked from below, and people started using national symbols to distinguish themselves, to identify themselves, to show who they are. And it was a tremendous moment of sincerity to express the Belarusianness, which is not part of imperial narrative, is not part of Russia, of great Russian culture. It's almost difficult to pronounce. So the protests, as you know, were cracked down brutally, and the pro-Russian regime in Belarus started to subdue all possible manifestations of national culture. And for you to understand, the Belarusian language and culture had been suppressed for decades, if not centuries, before by several waves of Russification. So it had actually survived 250 years of Russian occupation, and this still was the language and culture were still alive and kicking. And even in spite of the periods during the Soviet times where it was actually promoted to look at the Belarusian language as a language of rural areas and something low class, and even those parents who would speak Belarusian with within their families would try to avoid it so that the child does not get a bad accent, because further the child would need to go to university, and it would actually be not very cool. So all those things, I think they are in common, and we share with our neighbors, other nations who have been part of this imperial sphere. I would maybe like to, answering your question, make this point that when we look at, it's been really a lot of interesting points that have been said today, and I'm taking a lot with me. What I would probably like to add to the discussion is that, well, the Belarusian case is a bit special because we have the Belarusian culture developing in exile at the moment, which is the place, actually the external space has become our space. And this is where we read, where we discuss, where we speak our language freely in exile, where we write our books, do our cinema, and so on and so on and so forth. So this exile community is a place where the Belarusian culture is currently preserved. However, when talking about the Belarusian culture inside Belarus, it has always been difficult. Even after the independence from the Soviet Union, when the his name came to power in 1994, made this referendum introducing Russian language as the second official language. We, after a short period of textbooks at school written in Belarusian, and Belarusian becoming a language of instruction at schools and universities, everything was curbed down, and no longer possible to, for example, even study the basic subjects at school in Belarusian. So we still have, as of today, 3 hours of great Russian language and great Russian literature in the school curriculum, and 1 hour Belarusian literature and 1 hour of Belarusian language. is disproportionate, and as of today. And I think maybe 2 schools in Minsk which teach in Belarusian, 2 schools for the whole capital. And in the rural areas, it's barely possible. So this kind of long lasting colonization process has been manifesting itself in language, in literature, and in the narrative of Belarusian not being on the level, not being as good as Russian language. So this exile community, this is where we can take this as a window of where we have a window of opportunity for us to actually develop and practice the Belarusian language and culture, and especially after the full-scale invasion of Russia in 2022, a lot of Belarusians who had been maybe hesitant to speak Belarusian before shifted or started using Belarusian in their daily life as a way of showing that they are not Russian. So here, whether we like it or not, but language has become this battlefield. It's not neutral anymore as such. And even the Belarusian authors who had previously been writing in Russian started to choose publishing their books first in Belarusian and then in Russian to show their position. And we still have, actually, it's quite a hot discussion exactly now in the Belarusian community, in the media, about this language of publications and so on. And looking at this discussion, I can actually see that the supporters of those who prefer or who see Belarusian literature as Belarusian language literature, Belarusian speaking literature, not Russian speaking literature, is growing, and it has grown dramatically. And another point that I wanted to make, like a bridge to that, is that in our organization, we discovered somehow that, we do a lot of translations and we actually like the translations and literature. And we came to an understanding that there was no translation from the Belarusian language into Danish published to date. And in 2023, we took this task and decided to take up the task and make the first anthology of Belarusian literature in Danish. It was this attempt of freeing ourselves from the colonial perception of Belarusian literature as being, bilingual or it's equally fine and things like that. We simply thought, we don't want to discuss that. It's simply not normal, if I may say so, that a country which is just 560 kilometers from Denmark does not even have one little book or piece of literature translated into this language. We understand that we are talking here about 2 relatively small languages. Belarusian, 9 million people speaking it, and Danish, about 6 million. So we are talking about actually 2 quite small communities, but nevertheless, I think that this gap should have been filled. So it's not only the literature, it's not only translation, but it's also filling those gaps. And to maybe wrap up my little introduction, I would also like to say that, we've been using many metaphors about Belarus. We even tried and succeeded in changing the name in Danish from Belarus into Belarus. And thanks to everyone who uses Belarus nowadays, it sounds like music in our ears. And even when I come to the local municipality office to change my driver's license, and the person knows it's not with H but with B, is Belarus. It's really, you know, it makes my day. And and recently, like, we know that, like, Belarus is something with white, maybe, but white is also free. It's also clean, and, you know, it can be many metaphors in that. But white can also be, like, unknown and non-existent. And unfortunately, we have been in this kind of limbo area where we were not existent, not on the mental map at least, or associated with Russia, or even worse, somewhere in Siberia, you know. White is because it's, you know, something there. And then it was a kind of shameful spot, because, you know, we have the dictator who brutally treats the people, the population. And then the Ukrainian war and the Belarusian place in that. I must say that if we maybe were a bit more culturally sensitive and a bit more aware of this spot on our map close to our borders, which is Belarus, perhaps we, it's always difficult to say what we could have avoided or not, but at least now we can see that Belarus has been used as a platform. It has been used as a springboard. And it is a place without which Russia would not be able to threaten neither Ukraine nor the Baltic states. And we, as back in 2020, we have been crying, we have been, you know, asking, please do not turn a blind eye to us. And we are Europeans and we want to be free. And Belarusians are a completely European nation in their mindset, in their values and their identity. And therefore, it's particularly pleasant for me to be here today as part of this discussion.
It's also an interesting point to make in regards to language. Belarusian and Ukrainian are closer to each other than Ukrainian and Russian. So it is, I mean, we have already talked, and I have another acquaintance from Belarus where I speak Ukrainian to you, and then you answer in Belarusian, and we actually understand each other, which is super cool, I think. And my grandfather was actually Belarusian, so yours was Ukrainian, and yeah, it's a mix. But I was just wondering, to which extent do these activities in the diaspora groups and also what is happening inside Belarus, so really fostering the Belarusian language, working on literature in Belarusian, on translations in Belarusian. I'm pretty sure that not just in Denmark, but in other countries as well, right? There are attempts to work more on translations from Belarusian to other languages. So to what extent are these activities framed as decolonization, and where does security play into all of this from your perspective?
Oh, very nice question. I just need to be aware of time, not to take too much of it, not to start talking too much about it. But in essence, if you imagine that after the protests, practically all the NGOs were closed in Belarus. So people had to move the activities, and a lot of them, practically all the independent publishers, had to re-establish themselves abroad. And now we have publishing houses in Poland and several cities, Warsaw, Krakow, I think also Poznan. And then in Lithuania, in Germany, in Berlin, and then, yeah, of course, in London, but they had been there for quite some time. So now there is a strong support for the publishing activities, and the Belarusian diaspora, they basically snap all the books as soon as they get out, as soon as they get published. So we know, for example, the Russian-speaking Belarusian writer Sasha Flapenko published his first book in Belarusian. It was sold out like same day, literally within hours. although he had been known as a Russian-speaking writer and made his image as a Russian-speaking writer. And also his I think, marketing has been built in this way. So without even much effort, just the one action led to such a huge popularity of literature in general. So I think that that's why I believe that, well, books matter. People still read them. People still write them. They still translate them. And this is actually the area where we can get inside into the mindset and culture, because that's something that acts on the subconscious level. And I would really appreciate when people can get to know the Belarusian culture through, not through the Russian lens or the lens of the Russian culture, but authentic Belarusian culture. And unfortunately, we don't have so many people who speak Belarusian language fluently. For example, here in Europe, so we really need to search with torches night and day to find those who would be able to translate and to work together. And the way we worked with anthology was actually that we did a kind of experiment. We basically sat together with the Danish-speaking translators and authors and Belarusian-speaking, and then back and forth we tried to find out some interesting ways of how to translate, and there were some interesting discoveries on the way. I may, for example, give an example of a poem. In one of the poems there was a phrase about a dark village in Belarusian, Темная вёска, and then our Danish translator was writing that, and then she said, "Why is this village dark?" And then I was like silenced, because yeah, of course it was dark, because, a village, that's what can you do there? It's dark, gloomy, and underdeveloped, and this kind of thing. So in her Danish mind, she didn't even think that it can be something like very low and not good to be at. So we had to explain why this village is dark, and how would you actually translate it into Danish, dark village. It's not dark here in the villages, right? So such things made us also reflect back on ourselves and see how close or different we are where we are in our cultures.
Yeah, it's a really great example. And as someone who also translates next to my full-time job, I translate some of the poems, by the way.
Oh.
Check, you can take some of them home, and I'm translating a Ukrainian book into Danish, which will hopefully come out later this year. It is so incredibly important, I think, as well, to firstly to promote the different cultures through literature, but also to, from the other side, to try and understand this culture through literature. Thank you so much, Lizaveta. And now we will have Aida, and I promise you I practiced all of the last names beforehand, but now that I'm on the spot, I'm completely butchering everyone's last name. Abdrakhmanova. You're the head of the Tatarstan, thank you. You're the head of the Tatarstan Independence Committee and the vice president of the anti-imperial bloc of nations, and you have prepared an intervention as well to start with.
I would like to greet all guests and organizers of this forum. My name is Aida Abdrakhmanova. I am a head of Tatarstan Independence Committee, vice-president of the Anti-Imperial Bloc of Nations, and a member of the Free Nation League. First, I would like to briefly introduce you to my homeland, Tatarstan. The Republic of Tatarstan is a patch of territory that was violently conquered in 1552 by Ivan the Terrible. At the time, a large portion of the male population was killed, while women and children were taken captive. Since then, the Tatar people have been struggling to restore their statehood. And despite nearly 500 years of occupation, we still exist. We remember our identity, we know who we are, and we are not Russian. One of the most active periods in recent decades when Tatars came close to gaining independence was the early 1990s. In 1990, Tatarstan adopted a declaration of independence. In 1992, an international referendum was held, attended by foreign diplomats and politicians. Its results were recorded by the US Helsinki Commission. The Republic also adopted its own constitution. However, Moscow and Yeltsin, truth, intimidation, threat of aggression, and the use of military force halted the process. The desire for independence and the restoration of statehood is only merely a wish. It is a condition for the survival of our people as a nation. In recent years, the activities of national liberation movements have taken on new forms and gained international significance. These included speech in Europa Parliament, representatives of various nations of Parliament Assembly, discussion about creating a dedicated platform for captive nation, only captive nation, presentation of reports at the United Nations, participate on the Crimea platform and under our. This is why we perceive a serious threat to the existence of Russia. Criminal cases initiated against us, real prison sentences imposed, we are labeled as foreign agents. Pressure is exerted on our relatives and even attempts made on our lives. Today, many countries are living in a state close to pre-war condition in the face of a threat posed by Russia. For example, Germany has adopted a defense strategy for the first time since Second World War, in which Russia is identified as the primary threat in Europe. In Lithuania, air raid alarms frequently hit. I personally experienced one in December last year. In Sweden, similar alerts are also occurring. Russia has violated the airspace of Denmark, where we are currently located today. Estonia is seriously assessing the risk of a potential invasion of its territory. Why I'm saying this? Because we argue and provide evidence that the decolonization of Russia is the only viable path to a peaceful future for Eurasia and Europe. Yet Russian claims without ground that such a process would lead to a global catastrophe. But is what Ukraine, NATO countries, and their alliance experience today not already a global catastrophe? This is a time when countries are searching for reliable allies and partners. We are not seeking sympathy or pity. We are seeking partners and allies to eliminate our shared threat, Russia and its endless chauvinist wars, expansion and aggression. I would like to emphasize that the so-called good Russian, bad Russian, should not be legitimized. We have not right to speak on behalf of our national republics. A mere change of regime in Moscow is not enough for us. Nor should we be allowed to mislead Western politicians on again truth manipulation. A resolution which superficially includes the right of peoples to self-determination and merely wordplay. This right is already enshrined in the UN declaration, and we do not approve it from Russian liberals. If they were to formally commit to non-interference in the affairs of national republics, militarily, politically, and economically during a process of decolonization, that might be of some interest to us. However, the historical experience of our people shows the agreement with them cannot be trusted. Therefore, we oppose the West supporting them as the only legitimate alternative to power. We must draw on the lessons of the past in order to minimize risk and make this process as controlled as possible. Already now, we need to shape a vision of a future in which the decolonization of Russia is not seen as something unrealistic. This process requires strategic planning, foresight, and decided action. Together with our international partners and Europe as well, we must not allow Russia to continue to dominate and control our lands. Менге так, слава Україні!
Героям слава. Дуже вам дякую. When I wrote to Aida before this panel in English, you replied to me in Ukrainian, and that is how I realized that you have been learning Ukrainian since 2022, which is very heartwarming. And we have agreed with Aida that I will take the questions in English and translate them to Ukrainian to make it easier to understand. And Aida will answer in Russian, and I will translate it back to you in English. So you will see an exercise in multi-linguistics here. So my first question would be, because I keep going back to this quote of Putin that he made in a propaganda speech from 2022, which is such a great example, I think, of this Russian narrative, this Russian image that it tries to present itself as a harmonious, multi-ethnic federation. And the quote was, I am Lak, I am Dagestani, I am Chechen, I am Ingush, I am Russian, I am Tatar, I am Jew. So he was really trying to portray himself as every single ethnic minority in Russia in one person. Aida, from your perspective, what does this narrative of a multi-ethnic, harmonious, happy Russian Federation, what does it hide? Треба перекладати? Ні? Супер.
Путин, ну, так скажем, режим в России в лице Путина всегда манипулирует народами. Он всегда хочет показать то, что какое-то единство в России существует.
Putin always tries to manipulate the different nations inside Russia and show that this unity actually exists.
На самом деле это, конечно, не так.
In reality, of course, it is not true.
Но людям, которые уже запутаны пропагандой, иногда достаточно бывает этого, поэтому они это хорошо знают в Кремле.
And people who are already confused by propaganda inside Russia, for them it's enough to have this superficial narrative, and they know that inside the Kremlin.
Конечно, он это говорит не из великой любви к народам, и не из того, что он на самом деле так думает, а в этапы великих потрясений, а после 22 года это можно назвать таким этапом в России, они будут использовать все методы, чтобы собрать, сплотить около себя людей, и особенно народы.
Of course, Putin is not saying all of this, that he is all of these nations in one, because he sympathizes with the different nations. He is doing it strategically, and especially in a time of great distress, which came to the different nations after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. This narrative has been pushed very actively from the Kremlin side.
Особенно после 22 года все актуальнее стала тема именно деколонизации России и самоопределения народов, и тем сильнее режим начал как бы манипулировать именно народами. По-моему, с 22 года каждый год так и называется: День языков, День народов, День костюмов, День чего-то угодно.
Especially after the beginning of the full-scale war, where this decolonization discourse became more widespread inside Russia, the Kremlin started oppressing the different nations, at the same time as trying to, again, push this narrative of a united Russia, and having established days like the National Day of this and the National Day of that to emphasize again even more this this appreciation for the differences within Russia.
Ну а на самом деле, так сказал уже Асет, у нас 1 час только преподавания родных языков в неделю. И за последние 20 лет 2 миллиона татар перестало писать в переписи, что они знают татарский язык. Это реалии России.
The same as we heard is true in the Republic of Ichkeria. In Chechnya, the Tatar language is also being erased in Russia today, and it's only taught 1 годину, так? 1 hour per week, and more people in Tatarstan are losing their language. 2 million people in the last 20 years, 2 million people have noted that they no longer use or know the Tatar language.
Ну и в конце скажу, что Путин может быть кем угодно, но мы не Путин и никогда им не будем.
And I will end by saying that Putin can think he is whatever, but we are not Putin and will never be Putin. And I would like to go back to something you said in your speech about how this promotion of self-determination for the different nations in Russian different regions would create instability. And you said that instability already exists, but how can we go even further when we're talking to European politicians that are trying to portray, again, this process of decolonization within Russia as something that is too uncertain and too dangerous? Перекласти?
Как я уже говорила, что почему я затронула тему хороших русских? Я не хочу им выделять время на такой важной панели, но это важно, потому что европейские политики предпочитают встречаться с ними. Яшин, Карамурза, Ходорковский, Гудков. А почему-то они для них более легитимны, чем мы, хотя у них нет никакого права.
I would like to go back to this notion of the good Russians, although I also really don't want to spend time talking about them on this panel. For some reason, the European politicians prefer to talk to figures like Karamurza, Yashin, Khodorkovsky, instead of talking to people like us.
Люди с нечистым прошлым и нечистым настоящим, так скажем, политически нечистые люди, они имеют право заседать там и принимать решения за всех россиян. Это неправильно.
People with a past and a present, a political past and present, which is not always clear, which is murky, such as many of these people have, are for some reason thought to represent the entirety of Russia outside of Russian borders.
Вот одно из тех, чем может помочь Европа, это не сотрудничать с ними, как минимум минимизировать, или как минимум, чтобы мы говорили от себя за свои республики, за свои народы сами, но не они.
So something that European politicians can do is, instead of inviting those Russian liberals in the conversations, they can invite us, the representatives from the different regions, to tell our stories and our perspectives.
Я понимаю, что тема деколонизации России, она новая и неизученная, поэтому проводим форумы, поэтому есть вот эта книга, где можно ознакомиться и понять, что там ничего страшного нет. И то, что все страшное, оно происходит уже сегодня с нами, на наших глазах и в наших странах.
And I understand that the theme of decolonization in Russia is still quite new, but that's why we have forums like these, that's why we have books like these, so that people can educate themselves and see that it is not, decolonization is not something scary, and scarier things are already happening right now inside Russia.
Никакой эскалации быть не может, она уже есть. Россия уже всем угрожает, но ей никто ответить не может. Разве может быть такое?
We cannot talk about an escalation when Russia is doing what it is doing already, and how fair is it that they're doing these things to us and we cannot answer them back?
И это после того, как Украина показала, что у России нет никакой ни второй, ни третьей армии мира, и то, что она политически без партнеров европейских просто ничтожество на мировой и на международных институциях и арене.
And this is even after Ukraine has already shown that Russia does not have the second best, even third best army in the world, and it doesn't have political allies, strong political allies in Europe. That's it. And I think, can we get Liubov back on the screen? Is she still with us?
Of course.
Of course, yes. Great. Then I will ask one question to all three of you, and then we can take questions from the room. And the question, and I had to choose it really carefully, that I wanted to ask, which has actually been partially answered already in the other panels, but I would really love to hear your perspectives on it, is how would a genuinely decolonized European approach to Russian culture look like in practice? Liubov, do you want to start?
I think that decolonized approach doesn't mean actually canceling culture. I think it means contextualizing it. It means understanding that culture can carry power, and sometimes that power is imperial. In practice, this would mean not treating Russian culture as inherently universal or neutral, giving more space to culture that were historically suppressed, critically examining which narratives are being promoted and why, and being more careful about institutional partnerships that are linked to Russian state. And also, like, first of all, and this is the question that I heard many, many times, like, why do you complain that we read Chekhov and Tolstoy and others? We don't know Ukrainian writers, right? We don't know Ukrainian literature. And this is the problem. You don't know them because it was prohibited for them to write in Ukrainian. They had to write in Russian very often. Very often you don't know about them because they were killed as Ukrainian artists, right? They were killed in 30s. It was a whole movement called Boychukism, and they all were killed because they were Ukrainians. And this is exactly why the world doesn't know about them. So it's very important to understand the context.
Thank you. Lizaveta?
Is my mic on? Yeah. Thank you. I think a lot has been already discussed today, and in particular, the recommendation regarding the curriculum at universities, but also at schools, is very important to revise and to enrich with our discourses, with discourses from the countries that are not, or cultures which are not Russian and should not be confused with it. So that is one thing. But regarding the language, I also think that, I agree with Liubov, and I would like to suggest a bit more optimistic view over that, because look, we are still here and we still have our languages and still preserve our culture in spite of all the efforts of centuries and attempts over the centuries to suppress it, to eliminate it, to erase it from the people's memories. So people's culture is actually much stronger than we think. It's not so easy to erase. And therefore, I think even for the Russian culture itself, the more imperial it is, the more it tries to impose itself, the worse it does for itself. Because we become, even when we accept it to a certain extent and speak the Russian language, we contaminate it with our own language, with our own, I mean, contaminate in a good sense. So the Russian language and the Russian culture itself, the more imperial it is, the more it actually, the faster it will lose its own, how to say, language purity. We know, for example, that if it exists, of course. I think it was, for instance, a problem and a discussion in Great Britain for some time ago about the English language, because it's so widely spoken across the world. We all have our own versions of English, and for the English people, it is actually a problem because we create a new version of it, which they don't speak. So I think that there is also, in spite of all this, there is also a positive side to that empire can be actually self-destructive. And one more point that maybe I could add is that this tendency of using Latin alphabet has been seen in really many contexts. I think the former Soviet republics have been transitioning to Latin alphabet. I think Kazakhstan has shifted. For me today it was an interesting discovery about Ichkeria, that you had the Latin alphabet before Stalin changed it into Cyrillic. The same we had in Belarusian, and this is also something that comes very naturally and puts us in a more global context. So at the end of the day, I think that there are probably reasons to be optimistic, but there are dangers that we should be aware of.
Треба перекладати питання? Ага. Англійською чи українською краще? Як, на вашу думку, міг би виглядати такий реально деколоніальний підхід в Європі до російської культури?
Ну, это больная тема, потому что здесь русская культура очень хорошо сидит, крепко сидит, все любят. Когда в 22 году я даже в Швеции слышала, что такие фразы: «Ой, Россия опять осталась одна». Россия напала на Украину, но она почему-то осталась одна. Это сложный вопрос.
Зараз я перекладу. It's a very difficult question because Russian culture has its really good grip on Europe, and even in Sweden in 22, so after Russia invaded Ukraine, I either heard someone say that, oh no, Russia is left all alone now. So sympathizing, Russia sympathizers.
Ну, в этом, наверное, стоит в первую очередь наша задача. Мы должны показать, что Россия — это не монолит, а много народов, больше 190 наций, и каждый имеет свою культуру, свои традиции, своих писателей, и это все интересно. И сейчас дальше продолжу.
I think it is our responsibility as well to show Russia as a very diverse nation of 180, вы сказала? 190 different nations. So it is very important to promote this narrative that Russia is not a monolith.
Поэтому это не только проблема Запада, да, западных людей, это проблема России. Это она так представляла, что она единая такая страна.
So it's not just an issue in the West, it is an issue inside Russia, because Russia has been portraying itself as a monolith.
Хочу привести только один пример человека, которого вы все знаете. Это Рудольф Нуриев. Все думают, что это российский, советский артист балета.
I want to come with a very concrete example of Rudolf Nureyev, who everyone in the West or in Europe, правильно? Thinks of as a Russian or Soviet ballet dancer.
Но это не так. Он татарин, он мусульманин, он всегда об этом говорил во всех своих интервью, никогда этого не стеснялся, ненавидел все русское. Он был одним из первых, кто бежал из Советского Союза. Это было очень громкое дело, я думаю, вы все знаете. То есть он никогда не ассоциировал себя вот с русскими, хотя он был человек непосредственно культуры и был воспитан даже, руководительница была, по-моему, русская, балетмейстер. Но в любом случае вот эту идентичность свою он сохранил до конца своих дней. И это говорил об этом на Западе.
In reality, he did not perceive himself as Russian. He was from Tatarstan. He was a Muslim. He always talked about it. He hated everything Russian, and he even fled Russia at one point. And until his death, he perceived and presented himself as a person from Tatarstan.
He is not from Tatarstan. He is
He's not
from
from
Bashkortostan, but Tatar.
I just misinformed you. I'm so sorry.
Он даже в своих интервью осуждал тех, после него уже бежали некоторые, не сказать немногие, но некоторые бежали. Барышников, например, он говорил, что я не как некоторые по русским самоварам не страдаю и русских ресторанов не открываю.
Можете повторити ім'я?
Он в своем интервью, у него есть одно большое интервью, оно поделено на части, он говорил, не говоря фамилии, но так намекая на Барышникова, тоже известный артист балета, говорил, что я русских ресторанов не открывал и по русским самоварам не страдал.
At one point during an interview, he also referenced this phrase that I did not open any Russian restaurants and I did not have a longing for the Russian samovars.
Мне очень обидно, что вот такие известные личности, которые именно известны в первую очередь в Европе, во всем мире, ассоциируются именно с Советом, мы говорим, да, с Россией. И сейчас таких много, да, спортсмены. Они вынуждены говорить, что они россияне, потому что они не пройдут дальше. То есть эти все люди могли бы быть из Татарстана, продвигать нашу нацию, можно сказать, да, татары, говорить об этом, заявлять об этом, нести наш флаг с гордостью, а не российский кровавый флаг, который Россия использует наш весь народ в своей кровавой войне. Это не наша война, мы ее не хотим.
And this is happening still today. People of culture, people of sports are forced to say that they come from Russia in order to be able to participate in different events on different platforms. But they're not Russian. So instead of carrying the bloody Russian flag, they could be carrying the flag of, for instance, Tatarstan. And they're also using our people in their bloody war, and it is not our war. That's it. Do we have any questions? Only one question. Yes.
Thank you, Reinhard Kuczek from Pan-Europa, Austria. I think we cannot talk about culture without talking about religion, and therefore I have a combination of three questions. But it's a combination. It's a combination. So the first, what role does religion play in this great Russian culture? Second, what especially role is of the Orthodox Church in Russia? And the third question, how important is religion for the captive nations in their struggle for independence?
I think let's divide it. Liubov, you get the first one. How important is religion to the Russian culture? Elizaveta, you get the second one. What's the role of the Russian Orthodox Church?
І, Аїда, я вам дам останнє, наскільки релігія грає роль саме в цих деколонізаційних процесах різних націй. Let's start.
Start with the first one. So I think that Russian Orthodox Church is one of the key pillars of Russian regime. So it is definitely important for the regime to be strong, to be preserved, because it gives the regime, Putin's regime, and all these imperial ambitions, it legalizing. This is the task of Russian Church, to legalize these ambitions through narratives, and they do it pretty successfully, I would say. For Russian culture, you know, if you look back at Russian history and you look at how Russian government portrays Russian religion, church, now you will see that there were different, periods. We all know that there were times in Soviet times when religion was almost prohibited, where churches were destroyed by the regime. But somehow, in current vision that Russian government presents to the audience, they can all combine, those times where churches were destroyed, but also those times where churches were elected, like Tsarist time and so on. So this is the same with the glorification of Stalin. They do glorify Stalin a lot, but they also do glorify Nikolai II, the last Russia's Tsar, a lot. So they kind of managed to combine all these figures in the same narratives. And again, it proves the hypocrisy of Russian regime. Again, it proves that they do not really have true values. They just instrumentalizes these values. And church is one of the key tools to convey people that this form of the state and this regime is legal, and this is the only form that Russian state should have.
So the question about the Orthodox Church, as one of the examples or one of the effects of the activities of the Russian Orthodox Church is, for example, that the majority of the Belarusian population, which used to be Uniate population, 80% of people were brutally forced to change into Orthodox after Belarus became part of the Russian Empire. And there is no difference as such in the ritual itself. Uniates were, they're still like Orthodox, but it was part of the Catholic Church, but it was considered to be one of the worst nightmares for the Russian Orthodox Church, that the existence of this community. So the very first thing that was done in the Russian Empire was actually to get rid of this religious community, to turn them forcefully into Orthodox religion, or, well, basically exterminate those who didn't want to. So. But among Belarusians, we still have this tradition of, it's again very difficult to change over time. So in spite of all those forced conversions into Uniate religion, the Russian Orthodox Church was not able to get rid of the Catholic population in Belarus. So, the Pope still matters and still has some power. And even Lukashenko himself sometimes, listens to the diplomats from the Vatican. that meant that we still have mixed families. We still have people who celebrate both Catholic Christmas and Easter and Orthodox. So in the beginning of 90s, just in the beginning of the independence from the Soviet Union, we had all the holidays were double. So there were really a lot of holidays in the calendar because everything was double. Then Lukashenko changed everything, and now even there is no holiday even on Easter, on Orthodox Easter even. You know, on Monday everybody goes to work. But he pronounces himself also as an Orthodox atheist. Whatever it means. There are some very ultra, I would say, more, they are even more, how to say, they're more pro-Russian than Lukashenko themselves. There's communities, church communities in Belarus, and some of them are known as, you know, they go on missionaries to Sweden, for example. There was recently an article in the Swedish media that they were going around with their, you know, selling some souvenirs and so on. And the Russian Orthodox Church in Stockholm is actually close to the airport. I think in the first panel we mentioned that it's always somewhere where the critical facilities are. So they were coming there for what were they doing there and what were they selling. They are very active, but the population itself, luckily, is not that religious. I mean, it's not like they're atheists in Lukashenko's understanding, but statistically it's about 45% of Belarusians who are actually like believers or who are religious. So it's quite a secular society in this way, and therefore there is always a balance. Fanatics are still in minority, but they try to sometimes to make their voice heard. And that was the Belarusian context, but I think maybe also important to mention how the Russian Orthodox Church as an institution has been working on this external policies. It was really something that was done very professionally and consequently. And what surprised me, for example, personally, was a couple of years ago I came across a book about this advisor to Patriarch. He has been head of the external relations in the Russian Orthodox Church. His name is, like church name, Ilarion. A brightly educated man. He did his PhD in Oxford or something like this. Fluent in foreign languages. A musician, writing symphonies, you know, all this. And on the top of that, he was a priest back in Lithuania. When Lithuania was getting independence, he was on the barricades. With this biography, this man was able to build excellent relations wherever he went abroad, you know, opening doors, either, you know, with language, with culture, and so on and so forth. And that policy was designed in such a way as that, you know, trying to find allies wherever it was possible. So they would basically, they would collaborate with the Catholic Church if the Catholic Church is against the Western, you know, values or something like that. They would cooperate with Protestants and so on, but on this diplomatic level. So the Orthodox Church diplomacy is also actually worth looking into it, because they did employ the whole arsenal of tools how to succeed, and yeah.
Thank you. Aida?
Какую роль играет культура в процессе деколонизации?
Религия.
А?
Религия.
Религия? Я думала, культура. Я уже подготовилась по культуре. В процессе деколонизации религия играла особенно в 20-м столетии и так далее, да, до этого очень большую роль. Допустим, я говорю больше про татар. Потому что все школы и на родном языке были сосредоточены именно в мечетях.
So in the 20th century, and here I will focus on the Tatars, all the schools in the Tatar languages were inside the mosques. So there the religion played a very big role.
Следовательно, это помогало сохранить как язык наш татарский и обучить уже образованное будущее поколение.
So it helped both to preserve the language and the religion and educate the future generations.
И поэтому удалось татарам сохранить самосохранить идентификацию вплоть до, ну, честно говоря, до советского периода. И даже в советском периоде люди сохранили и язык, и культуру, потому что в основном жили в деревнях, но в путинское время ассимиляция произошла катастрофическая.
So even before the Soviet time and during the Soviet time, it was possible for Tatars to preserve their culture and their language up until Putin came to power.
Но сейчас только религия не поможет сохраниться, допустим, татарам, как татарам, именно потому что молодежь уже читает религиозные книги на русском языке, то есть это не поможет.
But today, even the younger populations who are reading religious books, they are reading them in Russian. So this link between religion and language for Tatars is being savored.
Ну вот конкретно татары же это не только мусульмане, это и христиане, ортодоксы. И вот в пример мусульманам, татарам, ортодоксы как раз-таки проводят свои мессы на татарском языке в церквях. Не знаю, почему так получилось.
But Tatars are not all Muslims. There are also Orthodox amongst them. And for some reason, there is a difference there because the masses for the Orthodox Christian Tatars are being held often in the Tatar language.
И, к сожалению, вот на такой ноте все-таки не очень хорошей хочу закончить, что ни религия, ни культура в любом проявлении не поможет нам сохраниться как нации, только независимость наших республик полная, и только деколонизация, деимпериализация России поможет нам всем народам сохраниться как нации, и не будет угрозы ни Европе, ни так далее.
I would like to end on perhaps not a very positive note, saying that not even working on our culture or working with our language will help us preserve our culture. Only decolonization, full decolonization of Russia will help preserve the cultures of the different nations inside Russia.
Еще только одну минуту скажу, что раз у нас тема культуры, в последний год башкирская песня, именно национальная, этно-диско, по-моему, что такое «Хомай», может, вы даже слышали, она очень известная стала. И что сделали... Я не хочу говорить русские, да, это потому что конкретные люди делают, да. Они записали вместе с Димой Биланом эту песню на русском языке, и награду вручили именно вот этой версии и Диме Билану. Вот это что такое? Вот это называется Great Culture Russian.
So a very concrete example to end with. A few years ago, or was it last year? Last year, there was a Bashkir song that became very popular in Russia, and when it reached a certain level of popularity, people in the music industry in Russia, they re-recorded the very same song with Dima Bilan, who is a very famous. He's Justin Timberlake of Russia, basically. They re-recorded this song with his participation, and then gave him an award for for the song. That's it. Yeah. And we have, before you leave, please don't leave yet, because we have two things that we need to do before everyone leaves. First, Aida has, you have something? Yes.
Олег Маголецкий сегодня не с нами.
Oleg Mogiletsky is not with us today, or he couldn't be here today.
I would also like to say a little about Oleg, the inspiration and organizer of the Forum of Free Nation of Post-Russia. He is a wonderful person, and he is our energy, doing so much for Ukraine and for liberation of freedom captive nation. On behalf of the Tatarstan Independence Committee, I like to present the forum with a letter of thanks and a branded T-shirt. It is a shame Oleg called come, but I pass in to Taras.
Instead. And дякую. And our very last intervention, I will give you the spot to present yourself. Vil du gerne sidde ned, eller vil du gerne stå op?
Det gør ikke så meget. Stå op.
Vil du hellere stå op? Ja, det kan jeg godt forstå. Vil du så gerne stå der måske? Ja. Eller foran scenen?
Вітаю. Привет, Marshal Orel. I have prepared a speech. I'm representing a Chechen battalion who has been fighting in Ukraine since 2014. I will keep it very short because I have a lot in mind. But first of all, I'm grown and raised in Europe, in Denmark, and I'm a Danish citizen. And I'm representing Sheikh Mansour Battalion in Denmark and in Europe. And my father is the founder of Sheikh Mansour Battalion and Jahar Dudaya Battalion in Ukraine. I'm 24 years old. I'm studying in Copenhagen University, and I'm studying law. I previously studying social science, and law is a big matter for me because when you think of law, you think of structure in society, you think of equality, and just people being treated as normal human beings. I will keep it short. Dear friends, respected participants, and honored ghosts, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. It is a privilege to stand here among people who understand, perhaps more than anyone else in the world today, the cost of freedom and the reality of resisting imperial aggression. My name is Elbek Musayev, and I'm here as a representative of the Sheikh Mansour Battalion. I come from Chechnya, a land that has endured in centuries of imperial pressure, violence, and attempts at erasure. When we speak about imperialism, we are not speaking in abstract terms. For Chechens, imperialism has meant deportations, destroyed cities, cultural suppression, and the systematic attempt to break a people's spirit. Our history is marked by resistance, but also by loss. Entire generations were displaced. Our language, traditions, and identity were pushed to the margins, and yet, despite all of this, the Chechen people have survived. I'm studying languages. I know 7 languages. I speak Turkish because I was raised in Istanbul. I have prepared a speech, but I know we don't have a lot of time. I'll just keep it short. So the thing is, our Chechen language, I'll just describe, if we take, for instance, the development of the war in Ukraine, they will lose their language if they occupy Ukraine. We see it in Chechnya today. The main language in Chechnya today is Russian. All literature is on Russian. In our home, for instance, in Denmark, all are speaking Russian. I'm saying to my parents, we don't use Russian words. We need to show our, they are our enemies. How can we speak the language? Genocides have been committed by the Russians on Chechens. By my heart, I hate the Russians. just the name, just the fact my passport before 2023, it was always written Russian, even though I'm not born there, even though I don't have any connection to Russian. And I feel the Ukrainians. If we don't stop the war in Ukraine, and if we don't stop Russia, it will also come to Denmark. I'm a believer of freedom, and I'm a believer that we can fight together. And I'm supporting Ukraine, and I need to get everyone on board. I don't care if you are Danish, I don't care if you're Christian, I don't care if you're a Muslim. We need to stay strong, because Russia is not about religion, it's not about anything else. They just want to colonize. They are the only existing colonizing power in the whole world today. How can they survive? How can NATO not stop this brutality? How can small nations like Chechnya, Dagestan, Ingushetia, and also Georgia, and also Ukraine and Belarus, it's crucial that we just connect and we cooperate and stop this, because Russia is not just today, it's in the future. Because if we don't stop Russia, they will also invade the rest of Europe. And I'm the last with ending this speech. It's an honor to stand here today in front of you all. I'm hoping one day Ukraine will finish the war with a victory. And a quote stated by Gerard Dudayev, he said, "When the sun in Ukraine rises, we will defeat Russia." And I'm a believer, if we just fight and have discipline and we believe in freedom, we will win this war. Slava Ukraini, slava naciji, slava Ichkeria.
Героям слава!
Thank you very much for this passionate ending of the conference and of the forum. Чеченский батальон имени Шейха Мансура. Thank you, dear guests. I invite Charlotte and Taras maybe for just very, very final conclusions of the forum. You please, up to you. You can stay, but thank you, Valentina and Aida and Liubov, and for the participation. So, Charlotte, 2 minutes from you as a closure.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for letting the Danish Foreign Policy Society be part of this event today. It's so many important messages has been brought up across the room, and I'm still, not able to comprehend everything, and I really believe that the voices that we have heard here today are unique for anything that has happened in in Denmark, really. So I hope that we'll manage to transmit it even further. We need to have more emphasis on this, and more bring the different people here and talk and explain, because I think we see Russia as a monolith. We see them as something, we don't see the individual nations and people in the same way, and I think we managed to do this today. So I'm just happy that you invited me in.
Thank you, Taras.
First, I want to start from past. I want to pay tribute to a very special man, Mr. Janusz Bogajski, who was co-author of this book. He was basically brought it together. He is author of many books, and he was one of the founders of this decolonization idea. I recommend to read not only this book, but many other books. Unfortunately, last year he passed away. He was a truly great friend of ours. He was a great hero for decolonization. He was one of those Westerners who were not afraid of speaking about the future of Russia. And he was the one who basically launched this movement. So we will always remember him, and I think he will, looking on us from the above, from the sky, he is happy that his ideas, his works are happening, and we are doing this. I want to talk about the present, the current event. Thank you, Natalia, so much for responding to us, for organizing and for hosting us. This is a great event. And I want to talk about the future that, first of all, on June 17, 18th, we will have another Free Nations of Post-Russia Forum in the city of Bratislava in Slovakia to learn about the experience of the velvet divorce between Czechia and Slovakia, and how this experience can be used by post-Russian space, by post-Russian states in a peaceful divorce, so that it happens without any wars, because we do not need wars there. And talking about the future, I want to thank every one of you, because when we are talking about decolonization of peoples, of the territories, we should start first of all from the decolonization of the mindsets. So thank you for coming together, and thank you for sharing your ideas, discussing with us, and promoting our topics all around the Denmark. Thank you.
Thank you, Taras. I want to again bring up Oleg Mahaletsky, who unfortunately could not be here with us today. But it was great to partner with him and you and others on organizing. And we very consciously decided to make the topic of decolonization of Russia the topic of the third annual forum. We will work on other events as always with the Danish Foreign Policy Society, with whom we have very strong partnership. I think the big difference, and you probably saw how the conversation evolved from history to today, and from today to history. The great difference, of course, is now that we have access to information. We actually have a chance to feel and talk to people from Ichkeria, Chechnya. We have a chance to hear someone from Tatarstan. We have a chance to see and hear someone talking from Belarus. When the Lithuanian, when our friend in the very beginning was citing a Lithuanian poet from 16th century describing the Russian brutality of the attack, I immediately thought about 1708 when Ivan Mazepa, Ukrainian Cossack hetman, decided to side with the Swedish Karl X, and we always ask ourselves in Ukraine what would have happened if Poltava didn't turn out what Poltava turned out to be. But you don't know about the name of Baturin, because in 1708, on 2nd of November, when Peter I found out about what he considered was a traitorship, but actually it was one of the first things for independence of Ukraine, entire Baturin was burned. People were killed. It was a level of brutality that was inexplainable, but who in Paris or London or Copenhagen or other places have heard about that? So, but now this knowledge should equip us to act, and not to be even more curious, and to invite even more voices of the captive nations to the table, and never let Russians speak for. I mean, obviously Russians can never now speak for Ukraine, but cannot speak for captive nations of the Russian Federation either. So let's respect and let's bring these conversations to the fold. And I just want to also thank another person who is not here, but she's actually been my partner in crime in organizing this event, as well as for Charlotte. From our side, it's Katerina Bernata Christensen. She's actually right now in Serbia, but she's been the force behind putting the program and contacting many of you speakers and aligning our partners, as well as, of course, huge kudos to the team of Ukraine House, Maria Marko-Mortensen, Tanya Chish, Valeria Prolipko, Daria Boyko, Pani Ludmila and Alina for all of the kindly prepared food for us, Jesper, Elias, Vitaly, Ola, Olena, and Nadika, our photographer. Huge thanks for all of your work. Thanks to our technical team. Everything worked great, so really thank you for your work. And we thank all of our speakers. You've came and shared fantastic perspectives with us. It's been an honor to be with you today, and look forward to the 4th annual forum in a year's time. And we have gifts for all of our speakers and moderators. So, yeah. Для українців, українці це Тарас. А хто у нас ще з українців був? Ярослав, так. І Олегу ми передамо, бо Олега немає. Так. І це, and we have unique Ukrainian gifts to all of our Danish colleagues. So that would be you, Charlotte, and all of the speakers. Yeah. Можете мені тут витягнути? Yeah. Katya? There you go. And Reinhard? Here you go. Yes, you're right. Yeah, and Gemontes. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah, and we'll find the rest. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we will find, oh, thank you so much, Christian. Yes, thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, thank you so much. We will be finishing with more sweets and coffee and great conversations. And it is not typical to have an event from as early in the morning as we started until 6 o'clock in Denmark, but that only probably tells you how important that topic is. So thank you again for being with us, all of us. And do follow Ukraine House. In Denmark, we are right now transcribing all of the sessions. There will be videos. There will be releases on Ritzau. Valeria and my colleagues are already working on that. So do follow more of the content that we will share from today's event in the coming days. Yeah, really appreciate it. Thanks.